Today I've got with me Mark Olson. He's a United States Marine, and he's out there still kicking some ass. Mark, how you doing today, dude?
I'm doing good, man. Thanks for having me on.
Oh fuck yeah, like I was telling you, I think that I've said this before, but like the Instagram connectivity of being able to like follow along guys' journey while they're like, finding their own path after the time in service. And I've seen you've been doing some really cool shit. I really like that you're still involved in firearms and like teaching tactics and fundamentals because I think that's a huge thing. And who better to not be an instructor than somebody who went through some pretty rigorous training in the Marine Corps in the infantry. You were 0311. So we'll get into all that stuff, but let's start off with like where you grew up and what that was like.
Yeah, so I had probably like a pretty middle class upbringing. Raised out here in Westminster, Colorado. Um, so nice, easygoing state. Um, Little weird because I'm adopted, so my family isn't my blood family, which is a little weird for some people. But I mean, family's family, as you know, with like the Marine Corps, it doesn't
Fuck
you
yeah,
don't have
dude.
to be bound by blood, as
Exactly.
long as people take care of each other, right? That's your family.
Definitely, dude.
So that was a pretty nice upbringing, nice supportive family. Nothing super weird. Um, so yeah,
Did you get involved in any like sports teams and shit when you were in high school? Did you find like a community or a tribe with sports?
not really. I played a little bit of sports before high school and like pee wee stuff. High school got a little weird because our high school team wasn't good for football. I mean, our quarterback was like legally blind, and most of like the freshmen were playing on varsity anyways. So it was like, man, this is not a good place. Um, but I probably should have still. But
Yeah.
otherwise, yeah, I didn't play a lot of sports in high
No, well,
school.
what kind of shit were
So
you into when you were growing up?
same thing I'm into now. I did a lot of shooting still. I shot like not quite competition, full competition, like trap and skeet, but I would shoot trap and skeet out here at Colorado Clays pretty much like every weekend with my dad. Do a lot of shooting there with my dad and my brother. So I've always pretty much been in the shooting side of the world.
Yeah. Were you a G.I. Joe kind of kid and watching like Stallone and Arnold movies and shit, or were you into that kind of stuff?
Yeah, man,
Fuck yeah. That was like
absolutely.
I assume I'm pretty sure we're like same age, same era. I'm a 90s baby, so growing up with that like late 70s and 80s like action films that are just like, you know, what they were back then. But when you're a kid, you're like, oh my gosh, this is so awesome. Um, but
Yeah,
yeah, that's
absolutely.
that lifestyle. When you're growing up, I mean, I was in fifth grade when it happened. Did you have any thought of when 9/11 had happened and we were attacked? Did you have a thought back then that you wanted something to do with the military?
I did. I've pretty much always wanted to be in the military since I was a small child. Um, I don't really know what drew me that way, but it's always been something that's been like deeply embedded in just who I was. That I always wanted to go into the military. When 9/11 happened, I was so young. I mean, I was 5 when 9/11 happened.
Okay.
So I was really young. I was in kindergarten.
All right. So that, I mean, that I'm sure down the road as you grew up a little bit and, obviously seeing that GWAT kind of explode, being in middle school, being in high school, watching it go from that period of, being attacked, the invasion, does that kind of get your mind churning a little bit more about what branch you're thinking about wanting to enlist into?
Yeah, a little bit. Originally, I'd wanted to go like Rangers because OG Rangers, same as in the Marine Corps, had built themselves a reputation for both what they were doing in Iraq and Afghanistan. Um, but then my brother ended up wanting to go into the Marine Corps infantry and talked me out of going into the Army to go into the Marine Corps infantry, and then he flip flopped and he went into the Army
What an asshole.
and
What a
became an
fucking
11 Bravo.
asshole.
So
That's
whatever. I
funny.
think it
That's
worked out
funny.
well for both of
Yeah,
us.
well, at least I mean, did you guys have competition growing up on like who was better or what?
Yeah, all the time.
So it's
Me and my
it's
brother.
settled now. Like it's written in stone, who's better now, right? Obviously, because you
Oh
joined the
yeah,
Marine Corps, yeah.
yeah. It's no contest, hands
Yeah,
down.
they're solid.
Faster,
So
stronger. He's a little
there
taller than me, but
probably a better
whatever.
shot, probably a better shot.
Yeah,
Um, so that having that go down, you and your brother had made this. Your brother I ended up flopping and go to the Army, but you make the decision to join the Marine Corps. How old were you? And was it like right after high school?
Yeah, so I went into the delayed entry program when I was like 16 and a half almost. I had already taken like the ASVAB, they offered it at my high school. I took it, super, super high scoring on it. So the recruiters were like, hey, man, you're a little young. Like, you got a really high GT, so you can pretty much do whatever you want. We can't have you sign any contracts or get you a formal contract until you're 17. And then, yeah, I graduated and I shipped out to boot camp next month, 2 months
And
after.
what year is this?
That would be 2014.
2014. Okay, shit. So do you know what month was it?
Um, that would be like July.
Okay, okay, gotcha. I got out in April of 2014. So I had left like right as you were coming in. I'm getting out. But yeah, that whole like being a young kid, I can relate because I mean my mom signed my ass up when I was 17 years old. I went to Marine Corps boot camp before my 18th birthday. I was like in boot camp for a month and a half before I had turned 18. So, I know
Yeah.
how I was like having that feeling of being a younger kid and you go in there, it's like right out of high school, like right like whatever it was a week or two after high school, I, enlisted in the Marine Corps. Started that journey. But what was that journey like for you? Being a young man, just getting out of school, and like what's going through your head on your motivation to do this?
Yeah. I mean, that journey is super cool, I think, especially for younger dudes. Because I know that you and Mason had talked about it with like that men in America these days don't have like a rite of passage anymore.
Yeah.
Like this is what cements you as like a man, like manhood stones in Scotland or anything like that. And so that's kind of like that same thing of for me that warrior mindset and like every culture has that separate class of people has always just been a super important thing for me, and that's really what I was looking at, especially going into the infantry. Because again, like so many people think that the infantry is like a punishment for dudes that are like dumb or anything. It's like, man, we had a volunteer fighting force. The dudes that were in the infantry wanted to be there.
Right, dude,
You know,
I mean when I enlisted in the Marine Corps, this is no like I did not know like when he asked me what my I wanted my job to be and what I was looking to do, I was like, What what do you mean? Like what do you mean? I'm thinking you go to join the Marine Corps, like you're gonna be a fucking grunt.
yeah,
And that was the first time that I had found out that there was other jobs that you could he's like trying to talk me into being like he's like, "Oh, I was a combat engineer. You could be a combat engineer. You'll be with the grunts." And thank God I had a cousin and another family member that served in the military. One was specifically a Marine, and he's like, "Dude, when you go in there and you sit down and you talk to them, you tell them exactly what the fuck you want. And if they don't have it right there, you get up and you walk away." He's like, "I guarantee you they will call you back." And that's exactly what I did. I told them I wanted to be a grunt. They said they didn't have any availabilities. I walked away, got a phone call like a day or two later. Dude drove to my house and he's like, "Yep, we got that you got that infantry spot, like sign me up." And I went, that this '03 open contract or yeah, I think either yeah, '03 open contract, and then I just decided to stay in 11 like once you hit that break in training between, weapons sections and shit. But yeah, I'm
same
sorry.
thing.
So same thing for you?
Yeah, it's super weird that like I was the same way of like, man, why would you want to do anything other than be in a fighting or combat arms MOS? Like even if you didn't want to be in the infantry, like, but like, man, not wanting to be like a tanker or something still, but like specifically joining to be like an admin dude or something is weird.
Yeah, seriously. I mean,
Fuck, man.
unless you've got like a motive or a goal to accomplish after the fact, and you're like, look, I'm going to use this to push me towards a career or an education skill set and like going to go to college afterwards, use
Yeah,
my GI Bill. I can understand that. But, and not to negate anyone's, time in and what they
yeah,
chose that
absolutely.
job, but, and also you got to think that there's those guys that get lured in and baited in, especially the younger dudes, like I turned 18. I don't need my mom or dad to oversee this. I'm going to be rebellious and I'm going to join the Marines. And they go, "Hey, open contract. They'll more than likely put you in a job like this." And then next thing you know, they've got some job that they never signed up to do. That happens all
Yeah,
the time.
I mean, a bunch of the recon dudes that dropped that happened to them. I mean, now you're no longer recons needs in the Marine Corps. It's like, man, that
Yeah.
sucks.
I mean,
Um,
luckily the guys that I know that got dropped from BRC or whatever that was that they, yeah, BRC, right? That's basic reconnaissance
yeah,
course or whatever. They just got sent, like, luckily for them, they got sent to infantry units, like they went to an infantry battalion, not to like the whims of the Marine Corps. So it was like
Yeah,
luckily for them. But
yeah, we were like half and half. A lot of those dudes got sent wins of the Marine Corps, and then the other half that are fortunate enough to stay were all made it all. They're all ended up being scout snipers in our unit. Now, who knows what they're gonna do because taking away
yeah,
that MOS. So
yeah, that's unfortunate, man. You got to think about those guys out there that dedicated themselves to building a skill set in a certain, trade craft, and then they're going to be, I mean, I guess they'll be pushed out if my understanding is correct. If they're staying in the line battalions, they'll be like designated marksmen, and if they move on like to force reconnaissance or the MRBs, they'll be a scout sniper MOS within
mm-hmm.
like a critical skills position. So, I mean, it is what it is. It's unfortunate to say. I mean, I'm not a scout sniper. I'm not in that fucking that cult, like I'm not a part of that crew. So I have no room to speak on that. But from what the guys say, it's like, that's disheartening. It's like I worked at this and now you're gonna take this away from me and like strip me of my identity while I'm still in the Marine Corps. That's gotta be pretty fucking unfortunate, like pretty upsetting.
Yeah, yeah, puts them in tricky spots too because of like seniority as sergeant. Sometimes Raiders don't pick those dudes up. They can only take so many
Yeah,
sergeant slots. And it's like, man, all these dudes are sergeants already,
yeah.
if not staffs. And so it's like now they won't go back and be like chief scouts or anything. So I don't know.
Yeah, it puts them in a tough spot. But what was circling back to like that getting into the Marine Corps, what was your mindset like throughout boot camp? Like, were you a pretty motivated recruit? Was it pretty for me, I think boot camp was pretty fucking easy, not gonna lie. There was definitely some tough times, but how did you, thrive or fail while you were in boot camp?
Yeah, I mean, boot camp's pretty easy. I'm not super like outgoing or super vocal all the time, so it's pretty easy for me to just stay under the radar. I
Yeah,
mean, boot camp's yeah, fairly simple. Just do what you're told and exist. You don't really need to do a whole lot. I didn't do anything like super special. I wasn't like guide or a squad leader or anything. Just existed,
just that, yeah, yeah, like
doing my
the
best.
you're the gray man in the platoon, just like I'm not
Yeah.
gonna get fucked up today. So fairly. I think too, like the mental side of things, though, like the physical stuff. That's what I'm saying. Like I didn't think boot camp was as like Arlie Ermy as I thought it was going to be. If you catch my flow on that, it's like I definitely thought there would be more of a full metal jacket mentality to Marine Corps boot camp, but I guess times progress on. I mean, don't get me wrong, the drill instructors were still good at what they did and they were still pretty ruthless at times, but
Mm.
I wasn't getting my ass like, you know, butt stroked or fucking beaten the shit out of. It was just IT'd on the quarter deck and maybe they hemmed you up by your fucking collar and pushed you up against the wall kind of shit. But um did you went to I'm sorry, San Diego, or were you in what you would call Lejeune for boot camp?
No, yeah, I was a West Coast Marine,
Oh, you're a
West
West
Coast,
Coast Marine
Best
for
Coast.
sure. Yep, there you go.
Yeah,
We had the Reaper, dude. So anybody from the East Coast talking shit, I want to see you take on the Reaper. Come on.
dude, the Reaper's small, man.
I know. I
Like,
was saying that to my buddy. It's not what I thought it was after seeing it.
yeah, as like a half frightened, starved recruit, man, looking at that thing at like 2 a.m. You're like, man, that's a big old hill.
Yeah,
You hit the
seriously.
fleet. Like I was in Horno, and so you got like the microwave, you got like
Yeah.
Mount Motherfucker and cheap shit. And you're like, man, these are way bigger.
Oh yeah, dude. That's definitely opened my eyes up. I mean, when you go to into ITB and then obviously when you go into Fleet, I came back for ISLIC. I went there in like 2011 and we did like the urban effects or urban effect, final, fucking whatever. And we're like prepping and I see these recruits like coming around doing it. They weren't hiking the Reaper, but they had like a boot camp class out there doing something for the Crucible. And we're looking over and I'm like, man, that's they're like, yeah, that's the Reaper. And I'm like, that is not the fucking Reaper. They're like, dude, that's the Reaper. And I'm like, that's fucking weak sauce, dude. That is fucking weak.
Yeah, yeah, because they got that little mount town at the bottom of it
Yeah, that's
that
that's
like
what
you'll
we were
train
doing.
out at.
Yep.
Yeah,
But yeah, so you finish up boot camp, seems like you stayed below the radar, which a lot of guys will try to do and get through it without causing any issues. So did you feel like you had accomplished something pretty solid like when you had graduated boot camp?
yeah. I mean, it's the same. Like the Marine Corps is so good at just getting guys to be Marines and take pride in that, which is super cool. And just really instilling that community with the guys to your left and right. So yeah, getting out of boot camp was a cool moment. I don't think I took it as much as a lot of other guys took it, because like the end goal still was to be in like the infantry.
Right.
Is like, man, that's the important thing. Like, and I wish the Marine Corps took more pride in it like the Army does. But I get why we don't, is to have the whole Marine Corps as a whole, as opposed to separating it between the infantry and then everyone else.
Yeah, I get it. Like the sense
Yeah,
of, how they do, because if you're in the army through boot camp, you stick with guys that are just going to be, they go to boot camp and then AIT or whatever, and they stay
yeah,
in that same little pipeline or whatever.
yeah.
Um, so you get done with boot camp, you go to infantry training battalion in good old Camp Pendleton 52 area. What, that part of the journey where you're wanting to get to the infantry training and you're finally there, like, how are you feeling?
Man, I'm feeling good. The infantry training in ITB was cool. That's really when you start doing the job, right? Um, actually like doing all your real patrolling now, doing your movement to contact drills, hiking for speed, like that. This is the job. This is what I signed up for. It's like, man, this is cool. This is really cool.
Did you get the chance to shoot I know you get to do a lot of the trainer like AT4s, with the were you one of the guys that got lucky enough to shoot an AT4 while you're in ITB?
No, I was not.
No, yeah, I wasn't either, but I got to like this was like before they started fielding the Mark 32s like we started getting them once I got to the fleet, but they were like in processing on getting guys trained up on them. So they were like picked a recruit to or a PFC or whatever to shoot the Mark 32, and I just happened to be the guy that they picked, and I'm out there just fucking toom 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 toom. Everyone's all jealous because I'm just laying down a sheet of fucking 40 mic out, and it's fucking cool. I love that shit. Um, but was there something that you thought of like while you're in ITB and like it really put it down to like you knew that this is what you wanted to do? Like you're in it and you're like, fuck yes, this is what I signed up for.
Yeah, just the lifestyle, like going out, actually staying out in the field, being with your boys, digging fighting positions. Like this is that old school cool stuff. Like watching Band of Brothers growing up, like
Yeah.
seeing them at Best Stone, dug into fighting positions. Like, man, that sucks. But it's
Yeah,
like, man, that's
dude.
pretty cool.
Yeah, were you it was probably what, because you went to boot camp in like June or July and then so you're probably in Pendleton like during December, January time frame, yeah? Like so you're out there doing your whole ITB stint. Well it's a little chilly out in California, IA.
Yeah,
That's like that's I would literally like essentially went on like the same track. So I was like during that process in the same time. So I remember those nights of like, you got Artie Sims going, you're like trying to like dig your fighting position. You think that they're gonna come and like ensure that your parapet's like at the perfect level and your grenade sinkhole is like, so far deep and you like try to sneak some pokey bait out there and you've got some shit stuffed in your pack and guys are like trying to I don't know, that lifestyle is just so funny to look back at because you got a bunch of like 18, 19. There's a little couple kids that are a little bit older, but you just got a bunch of kids like shooting machine guns and running around with their fucking heads cut off and they're like screaming and yelling and doing all this crazy shit. Like, yeah, it's a good time.
yeah, it absolutely is. It's a blast. There's nothing like it.
Yeah, I would love to go back and just run through like the courses of fire with like the amount of ammunition that was available at no cost to us and be able to just get it, like fucking dumping rounds, shooting 50s and
Yeah,
240s and maybe throw a couple rockets in there. Like who wouldn't want to do that? Come on.
yeah, absolutely. Like looking back on it, man, like in the fleet, going to ranges and be like, man, this sucks. I don't want to be doing this right now. But now it's like, man, that was free ammo.
Yeah,
That was like a
seriously.
bunch of free ammo, free training time that like shouldn't have been pissed about it.
Yeah, and especially with like the ranges that we had available, there was like so much cool. Like I was in 29 Palms, so like we were able to do
Yeah.
everything and anything. But you get finished up with ITB and you're loving it. You're all about this infantryman life, being out there and getting after it, doing the hikes, doing the drills, doing the shooting, learning all that knowledge. What's your where do you get orders to? What's your next step?
So I got orders to 53 area. So I went straight over to Horno.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, I had orders to 1-1. And then when we got there, 2-1 was just coming off of the 11th Mew,
yeah.
maybe. Um, and their Sergeant Major White, I believe at the time, was like, "Nah, none of you guys are going to 1-1. You guys are all coming to 2-1," and just had us all check into 2-1. All right, cool, easy enough.
Nice. So you're a Gunsmoke guy.
Yeah,
Nice. We did some coordinating ops, or some joint ops in Afghanistan back in 2010. So I know a couple guys. I went to did some training with some guys from 2-1. So solid dudes. Camp Horno's not a bad spot to be stationed at either, or like Pendleton, not a bad spot to be at.
yeah. I think Horno's better than being out in like it's not Margarita, but
San
Mateo.
Mateo, yeah, San Mateo's
Yeah,
because that's that extra drive that you got to go over the fucking mountain and get over there, and you're in the fucking valley, and just to like, if you want to go and do something, I feel like Horno, you're just Barcelona Road to the gate in whichever direction, and you got a little more access to the shit that you're around.
yeah.
So you get the 2-1. You're just a infantry rifleman, 0311.
Hmm.
What's that indoctrinating process like once you hit the fleet? How are you getting treated? What's your receiving? How does you get brought in?
That was like stereotypical infantry receiving. We're getting fucked with a little bit. Seniors are all out on the catwalk, stay drinking, doing their thing, shouting at us, throwing bottles at us and stuff as we're bringing all our stuff up. Um, but at the same time, it was mostly like the RBE guys because everyone was on kind of like that. They were on post deployment leave for 96% of them, probably, So it's just really all the stay behind guys doing that. But it's still cool. Get a little bit of break in time, get set up very well. I was fortunate enough to have all the guys that were back were guys that cared a lot, either dudes that were transitioning from our platoon and had made it through indocs and were going to scout sniper platoon, or were some of our more senior sergeants and staff sergeants that were there. And so they did a good job at setting us all up for success. Still getting fucked with by some of the lance corporals and corporals there, but setting us up, getting us knowledge trained for getting us away from the schoolhouse basics to what the line company demands of us. So we were set up for success, which was nice.
Nice. Yeah, that's good to hear that you had some good leadership. I mean, it's not good leadership. It sounds like great leadership because with like an RBE element, most of the time it's either dudes that are transitioning and getting out of the military, or it's the shitbags and broke dicks and guys that didn't want
Mm-hmm.
to like found a way to get off of deployment. So being received in that aspect, yeah, you get a little fucked with. I mean, that's the name of the game, dude. When you get to
Yeah,
the fleet,
absolutely.
somebody's gonna fuck with you. And it's good. I mean, I can relate in a way that once we got brought in, yes, there was those senior lance corporals and the freshly NCO like pinned NCOs giving you shit, and you've got to earn your keep. When you get like you have to earn their trust. These guys have been on a
Yeah.
deployment together already. They've been together for the last, year, 2, 3, 4 years, known each other for this. Like you have to work your way into being in that position to be able to call them, a friend of yours and get into that clique, that they really is a clicky thing, especially inner squad, inner platoon. Like you got like that difference between the like you're fucking, you know, whatever, Bravo company, you fucking third platoon, you're third platoon, second squad, and like that right there is your fucking family. And
Yeah.
you've got to fit yourself in. You've got to earn your keep. So I think did you give me some examples of how you were able to earn your keep in inner squad or inner platoon?
So I was always just kind of one of the smarter guys out of my peer group. Other than we had a guy that was way older than us. I don't know how he ended up, why he ended up enlisting and staying with us, but that dude had his college degree and everything. He was probably one of the other really smart guys, but me and him picked up knowledge a lot faster than a lot of the other guys did, which was nice. And then just being super dependable with that, with like my team in particular was my peer group was heavier than me, so I could always keep up a little bit with PT a little bit easier than they could, just because I was a super small dude. I was probably like 120 pounds, 130 pounds maybe at this time.
Yeah.
So like running ain't no thing. 23 pull-ups at that weight ain't no thing.
Seriously,
Um,
I was the same way. I was like a fucking, I think I hit the fleet. I was 135 pounds, probably like 5'8", 5'9", like I'm as tall as I am now,
yeah,
and I ran cross country for a couple of years in high school, and I was like a pretty solid fucking runner. I didn't enjoy it, but I could. I could pretty much outrun everybody in the platoon.
Yeah, I wasn't like a super stud runner, but I could keep up with my team leader for the most part. He was a big cross country dude too and could run our dicks off. But I was faster than everyone else, so other than some other dudes from the other one of the other teams. But within
Yeah,
our team, rock solid.
nice.
So
What's the mindset that you guys have like while you're doing you're getting brought into the platoon, you guys are getting some knowledge dropped on you, you're probably going to the field doing some ops. What is the mindset that you guys are working up for? Do you know that you guys are going on a MU or a UDP? Is there a possibility of a deployment looming overhead?
yeah, so they had already pulled all of First Marine Regiment's CENTCOM deployments pretty much. So we were only looking at MUs for the next little bit, and we knew we were slated for the 13th MU.
Okay.
Um, so our mindset was still somewhat lax because most of the dudes had just come off the 11th MU, and so we only had very limited dudes that were left over from our last Afghanistan push in that 2010 2011 timeframe, being most of our squad leaders and platoon sergeants. So most of our leadership was looking at it as the 13th MU will be very similar to what they just did on the 11th, just with slightly different ports and all of that good stuff.
Right.
Um,
So is there something that your leadership has you guys focusing on in that training aspect that you grasp as, you're making your way into the next level? And I mean in the sense of like the upping of the tiers of training that you guys are going through. Like what do you see as the progression, not only in yourself, but the mission that you guys are preparing for?
um, Not so much. I think during that time frame, especially for my unit, we had really strong enlisted leadership up to company gunny level, and then the rest of our chain of command was not rock solid with how they implemented our training, what we did, and then how we did everything. Like even when we did raids, we would dig into like fighting positions outside of places that we did raids on, and it's like, man,
You're
the
supposed to,
exact
yeah,
the exact opposite of a raid.
you're
There's
supposed
no
to hit
exfil.
yeah, seriously, you're supposed to hit the target and fucking dip. You're not hanging around in the target building.
Yeah,
Um, but did um did you guys get? I know that you guys probably had like boat company, helo company, track company. What company were you with?
yeah. So we were tracks.
You were tracks. Okay.
Yeah,
Fuck that shit.
yeah. Tracks suck. They're pretty fun at the same time, but yeah, I'm not an ocean faring people. I'm a jungle faring people.
Yeah.
So being out on the open surf uh,
Yeah.
was not a fun experience for me. But
Yeah, I hear a lot of guys say that it is not a fun experience at all. I don't know anybody that likes being
no,
locked in a fucking possible sinking fucking can, jumping off the back of a boat. So you guys do your training evolutions and everything. You get worked up. Do you do some kind of type of like ITX, like final exercise that's letting before you're getting ready to go on deployment?
yeah. So we do. You do two different ones for that. You do both an ITX in case you get retasked out to CENTCOM, and then we also do like a Navy certification thing to make sure that the Navy can do their part, and then we can do raids and stuff with the Navy and all of that good stuff as the actual MEU as part of the MEF.
Okay. Now
So
you've like gotten to this point where you've gotten through a lot of the training, you're ready to go on employment. Like what kind of position are you in within your fire team, within your squad? Like how are you being recognized for the knowledge that you're able to get, retain and shit?
so at this time, I am I'm just I'm the rifleman in my team. I'm our point man. I'm generally the guy that gets set up with like rocket launchers or anything like that because that I had more knowledge of like the AT4 off the top of my head. Then at that time, I'd also been slated to do all of our JFO stuff for the platoon.
Nice.
So I'm running around with the Vector Dagger doing all that good stuff. And that's really where I am at in the platoon of like, hey, we need fires or anything like that. Like Olson's our dude.
Nice. So right now you could give me like a call for fire mission if I needed a polar mission spun up on an enemy position. You could throw that down for me.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. I love that shit. I still was doing some training with some guys. This was like probably I don't know, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, I was doing some contracting training and shit. And this guy was saying something about like, he's like, well, what would you do with the casualty? I'm like, well, we set up a fucking CCP. I was like, either you got to call for a Casevac, set up a 9 line. He's like, I bet you don't even fucking remember a call up a 9 line. And it took me like, I was like in the heat of the moment, but I fucking remember a lot of that reporting shit, dude. Like getting a bird spun up, you need the first 5 lines, doing call for fire. I mean, that's pretty fucking easy running a polar mission. You
Yeah,
just
polar
direction.
missions are super
Yeah,
easy. Direction and
you get,
distance
yeah, that's really all it
and
is.
your position. Like,
Yeah, like
cool.
don't drop rounds on me, drop rounds over there. Like this is where it's
Yeah.
going. This is your direction, your azimuth. Here you go. Um, but that's good. I think that shows that, like you said, you were a knowledge guy. You're able to retain a lot of that. I was that as well. I got made fun of because they're gonna like they called me like my buddies had these nicknames for themselves. And mine was the salt wizard, like the salty wizard, because I like knew it. They're like, you're the salt wizard. And I'm like, man, I wanted something cool, like I don't want to be the salt wizard, but I've accepted that. Moved on with I love being the salt wizard because now it's like I think back to being able to spit that shit off and knowing max effective ranges for, weapon systems, and I can still diss and ask, probably everything. Not a Mark 19, probably not a 50 cal, but anything else, I'll take it apart and put it back together. Um,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah. So you find your level of proficiency, you know what you're good at, you got your JFO position, you're able to call for that indirect fire and you do a little bit of like 9 line call not call for fire, close air support shit. Did you do some JTAC stuff or talk to air at all? Did you do any of that when training?
Yeah, so we did a little bit of that. We would attach to like the fist every once in a while to do a lot. Not a lot of that, but to get comfortable with it because it's. I mean, it's a completely different game, and getting trying to understand what they see versus what you see, especially
Yeah.
for like talk-ons, is
Yeah,
spicy.
that's usually why they don't allow the Lance Corporals to get on the hook when you're dropping fucking 500-pound
Yeah,
JDAMs. That's
yeah,
not
yeah,
usually the case. Um,
yeah.
but
But it's
so you
just
guys,
like anything else. Like technology was so good at like catching up with us. Like I don't know if you guys ever like we ran it when I came back as a corporal for our dudes, where they have like the whole trainer out in
the ISMIT,
um
the ISMIT trainer,
uh, um it's similar to the Ismit.
it's like a dome thing that you can use for call for fire and close air support and shit, right? And like you'll be in there and you can have somebody in the other like this is what I
Yeah,
that's like what it, you got somebody playing like your um what is it, your FDC, and then you got somebody playing like your pilot, and you'll either be like in that position of talking air on or like getting that
yeah,
fire mission spun up. Yeah.
yeah. And then they had like another version of the Ismit too that was like watered down, and it was like a militarized version of like the Arma game that you could do it on, and you
Oh
could run
yeah,
it on any of the
yes.
secured computers.
I think yes, I do remember that. I remember that shit.
Yeah,
It was like you like were able to like go up and like talk with locals and shit, and you could I don't know, there was like a input for things that you could say. I remember we were like sitting at a computer desk and you have like a headset on and they're like, "Oh, this will get the Marines interested. We'll get them a fucking shitty video game to play."
yeah.
You're like, "Oh, thank
We
you."
skipped all of that except
Uh,
for like the fire stuff of
hey,
like
kiddo,
figure out how to use your equipment.
go upstairs. I love you. Hey, I told you. Okay, hey, I love you. Go, 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 go. Go. Sorry, kids, I tried to tell I got some family over right now and I'm like, I'll see you later, go upstairs. I'm like, just keep the kids upstairs for a little bit, like, and it's not, I don't think it's a big deal. They come down. I don't think anybody's gonna be like, get your fucking kids out of here,
Man,
so yeah, you get this training. You kind of developed your skill set and where you fit in and like your function for your team and your squad. What's it like getting on that boat and heading out on a mule?
man, boats suck. Dealing with the Navy every day sucks. Being trapped on the boat sucks. Um, but
Living
it's cool.
quarters sucks, showers suck, food probably
Yeah,
sucks too.
yeah. Showers and living quarters are really the worst part. Food really sucks, but at the same time, like ships bring dudes pretty close too. Because at the same time, like you got to take care of each other because they don't feed everyone enough. So it's like you got dudes stealing food from the Navy to feed the dudes. Um, when we're getting resupply and stuff, stealing food, taking it into the bird things so the dudes can eat.
Yeah,
Um,
that's
fuck, man.
That's
They
an
suck.
interesting side of thing because I know some guys that have been on ship before, but I've never stepped on a naval vessel other than the one that's like parked in San Diego that you like walk through, like the is that the USS Midway or something? Is that what that is?
Could be.
I think I don't know, I forget the name of the ship, but it's probably somebody will be like, "Well, you don't even remember the name of the ship, you asshole." But
I
where's your
never
guys?
went on that one. I don't know.
No, that was like what my mom took me to do. Like as soon as I got graduated boot camp, they wanted to go see some sights and shit. And I'm like getting dragged. I'm like, I want to go home and like drink beer and sleep with girls, Like what the fuck? I don't want to go look at this shit. I just got done with boot camp, dude. Um, but so where's your first port you guys hit? What are you guys doing?
Um, man, what was the first port we hit? I think Hong Kong was the first port we hit, where we stopped in Hong Kong.
Really? Did you guys get
Or
some liber?
I guess we stopped in Hawaii, but we offloaded and we did training in Hawaii while the Navy did whatever the Navy did. But then yeah, I think Hong Kong was our first like actual Liberty port where we got off the ship and did stuff.
Did now when you get off the ship, is this like you taking the tracks off, or are you guys just getting off on foot and you're going to do some like local training? What are you guys doing?
Hong Kong was strictly a Liberty port, so that was
Okay,
just
gotcha.
we make port. I don't think they even let NCOs have overnight in Hong Kong, but it was like everyone else has to be back on the ship by like 10 p.m. or whatever it was at the time. So, and that was fun. Just a bunch of dudes doing random drunken debauchery out in Hong Kong.
Yeah,
Super cheap alcohol.
I did after my second deployment, I went to my third deployment was in Okinawa on Camp Schwab, and we got to go to mainland Japan too. But I know all about the drunken debacles in foreign countries, so I've been there a time or two, we can say.
Yeah. Japan's a little more restrictive though, because Marines have fucked it up too many times
Oh,
over there.
I
But
We all know that very well. Did you guys start off by, well, actually you were on, th I think the 31st Mu goes out of Okinawa, if I'm not mistaken. So where you guys
yeah,
is like main, like you're just on the ship. There's no like, island that you're stuck on in between.
no, no, it's pretty much all the ports in between. And then if you go to do training somewhere, then we'll stop again. So like we went Hawaii, then Hong Kong, and then I can't remember if we went to Seychelles, Africa before or after. Um, we went to CENTCOM for a little bit. We stopped in like the Red Sea, did some VBSS stuff with like the MRF outside of Yemen, and then went to Jordan and trained with the Jordanians.
Nice. So you guys got
So
some good train. Like, how's that VBSS life? I've never done that before. Like any shipboarding shit. Are you guys coming in on helos? Are you taking little ribs out there? How does that work?
yeah, so it depends on for each company what each company is doing. I think for the most part, all the dudes did ribs, and even then, it
Gotcha.
was for like very select few guys that would get selected to go on that. They wanted like, hey, who is the hitters of the company? We want like one squad per company to be spun up and stand by for the VBSS stuff. Because we were out there, there was like a SEAL team out there, and then there was some coasties out there too. And
Okay.
the SEALs and the coasties were running most of it. Everyone else, well, and Recon was running some of it, and then everyone else was pretty much standby for them, and then running like our fires dudes as observers for them.
Gotcha. Nice. That sounds pretty good. Sorry, I got everybody's coming downstairs to say hi. Hi, hello everyone. Sorry.
No issue.
Um, but yeah, so you guys are doing that mission, or some of the guys are set with doing that
Hmm.
mission of going and doing the VBSS stuff. What's it like being able to go into other countries and training with foreign militaries?
I mean, especially Middle Eastern countries, they're very it's a different culture, and so how they handle themselves is very differently. It's like trying to get dudes to train or like go out and patrol is like
Yeah, they're like,
herding
oh,
cats.
there's no problem, my friend. There's no
Yeah,
problem. Sit back. We have chai, we'll sit down and we're good.
like
So
a mile into a patrol, they're like, "Oh, we're gonna stop." It's like we're not gonna stop, man. We got things to do.
yeah, that's it's difficult to work with a country that one, the language barrier, and then two, like that culture of what they're comfortable with, and you don't want to be, and I don't know how this worked for you guys, but just to find the effective way to communicate with them. when they're not doing what you need them to do or participating. And because the last thing you want to do is tarnish those relationships that have been established and create
Yeah.
a fucking problem with the foreign military. So I'm sure that was pretty difficult to hold back from getting pissed off when you see guys that are just willing to give up so easily.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
How did you guys address problems like that when you came across them?
We had a pretty good interpreter. Our contractor that was with us was very good about it. He'd done a couple, man, I think he had done like 9 or so deployments with the Marines. And so working with these guys, trying to already kind of knowing what we wanted was easy for him, that we didn't really have to tell him a lot to be able to
Right.
translate
I
for us.
Yeah, I get he's already on that like mindset of what mission needs to be done and knows how to
Mm-hmm.
push them to be able to get involved. I guess you're lucky to have had somebody like that to help you guys out. 'Cause I know that there's problems and disconnects with even interpreters being able to relay in the right dialect or whatever it may be, that there's a disconnect between that kind of shit. So,
Mm-hmm.
how long is this mute that you guys are on? 6 months, 7 months?
6 months.
Okay, so when you're, knowing that you guys are turning around, and if there's anything that I missed that you think is important to maybe a key leadership trait or a moment that you noticed something that was a switch for you to like bring yourself to that next level of, mindset of being a young leader, because now you're going to be coming back off your first deployment, and more often than not, that means that you're going to be put into some type of leadership position. So what types of things are you thinking about in that aspect?
Yeah, so I'm doing the same. I'm just looking at what in the leaders I've had currently and then the leaders I've had in the past, and trying to do the best of what they've given us. Because there's always very weak leaders, and then there's very strong leaders that won't demand of you to do things. They'll just ask, and then that it's the correct thing to do, and you want to do it because they have that leadership presence. And that's the big one, especially like taking care of your guys, because that shift was starting to occur pretty heavily, where dudes were relying on their rank so much rather than taking care of the dudes. And that was a big one for me coming back, of like officers and senior staff NCOs like trying to protect their careers over protect their dudes.
Yes, I mean that's a hard thing too to differentiate between, because you're like, you know, you're connected with the guys, but then again, there's a disconnect between the sense of, and again, like, you and I talked a little bit about this before, of like there's a different side of seeing coming from like a not a combat deployment and a non-combat deployment. So in the sense of they not having to like go through certain trials and tribulations, do you think that that played a part in the disconnect between the leadership, or was that already something that was there?
I think some of it was already there, just from the officer side of the house. For the most part, platoon sergeants and down, and our gunny was good about it because they were some of the last of the combat veterans that were in our unit, and we're still very good about taking care of it. But with a lot of the fresher officers, the officers that they took over the platoons from had been on the 11th MU, and then before that had been on like a UDP or something.
Yeah.
Um,
So
so
at this point, like a lot of, and I think some people don't understand the fact with like officers and like staff NCO, like you're basically filling out your resume essentially for that next position. So like how many awards that you were given out and how many successful evolutions and shit like that that you can build up. So in a spot like that where they know that, well, fuck, I mean, I don't want to be stuck here or something and go on another MU. I need to progress to the next level. So I've got to make myself look good. In turn, some guys can get in that mindset and forget to take care of the guys that make the whole fucking thing happen in the first place.
yeah, absolutely. Um, but for the most part, we still had some really solid leadership there, which was nice.
Okay.
Um, but that was one of the big things for me that I was looking at, of how do we take care of these guys and how do we get them to want to stay here and then keep the guys motivated to do it.
Yeah.
Because a lot of my peer group was like, man, we didn't do a lot on this deployment. We went around, we went drinking. Again, very limited dudes that did VBSS stuff, very limited dudes that were on like the small craft alert team, which again is just pointing guns at other boats, and staring at each other in standoffs. So
But yeah, nothing crazy coming from it, but still doesn't negate the fact that you're in the position that if something were to possibly happen, like you're the QRF for that region of your area of operations that you're going through. Like you guys could be spun up at any point in time, kind of like, what happened in Kabul. Those guys got spun up off of Mu to go to, the withdrawal of the airfield and everything. We'll get into that. I know that's a touchy subject for some people, to like try to pick it apart or like fucking, you know, popcorn stands it because if you're not there, how can you really know what to talk about? But we'll
Yeah.
get into that. What's your you're coming back now and you've seen a little bit of stuff. You trained with some foreign militaries. You gotten to drink some beers in a couple foreign countries, maybe do a couple naughty things. You're you're coming back. You've seen some leadership traits that that you want to grasp hold of and implement in your forward progress. And you've obviously seen some that you're like, well, that's fucked up. That's not going to be the kind of leader that I'm going to be. So coming back off that Mew, what are you feeling when you get back and you're in that next spot now?
I'm feeling all right. It was super competitive between our dudes, at least the dudes that wanted to take over leadership billets, and then a lot of the dudes that just wanted to exist and be riflemen, and didn't want anything to do with like team leader spots or squad leader spots. Um, so I was happy with where we were at. One of my buddies ended up being our squad leader, and I ended up being his first team leader for him, um, which I'm super happy to do because he was a super good leader. He's still one of my best friends to this day, dude that I can call up, ask for anything from. He does the same thing, hits me up all the time for stuff. Um, but both me and him have had two different leadership styles as well. But I think together, it made us a really effective unit for our squad and for the platoon, where
Yeah,
he really liked to bludgeon dudes down a little bit more than I did. Whereas like, hey, I'm not going to fuck dudes up unless they're fucked up.
yeah, I feel you.
So
That's a good way of good cop, bad copping, like your squad being able to have like, not that you're gonna undermine him, but being able to have
yeah,
that leader, that shows that I mean, it's hard when you got new guys coming in and you want them to be capable, competent, but also respectful, and then know where those boundary lines are of, what you can and can't get away with and how you're supposed to address somebody, during working hours, maybe like have a beer in the barracks or whatever. Um, but knowing that you have a different style of leadership than he did. Did you guys ever butt heads on things like that when, did it ever get hot and heavy when you're in the field or doing some training exercise and you ever get into some arguments over that kind of shit?
a couple. Generally, they were never based around like what the dudes are doing. Generally, it was tactics decisions of
Yeah,
like, hey, I don't think that this is the way we should approach this situation right now. I think X, Y, and Z would make more sense, or hey, maybe we shouldn't leave these dudes here in this weird security position while clearing out these buildings. Those are really the only times. Otherwise, again, it was super nice because me and him were super good friends that we could just sit down, and talk about stuff all the time. And he trusted pretty much everything I had to say from that tactics side of the house, where it's like, hey, yeah, we can just have a rational conversation when mission planning anything or when we're doing something. Be like, hey, yeah, maybe this isn't working, or I see this where you don't see it, and then being willing to pivot off of that, not butt heads over it.
that's
So
that's good that you're able to have like, a peer that, is a step above you in sense of like, leadership and responsibility, but you're also allowed that input and being able to bounce ideas back off each other because I think that's what it's about
yeah,
when you're trying to make critical decisions on, how to attack an objective or like where to set up your security or what kind of patrolling techniques you're going to utilize to get into a certain position or the route that you're going to fucking take.
yep,
So, I've seen things get, like real fucking hot and heavy over, a clash in egos and a clash in, leadership styles like fist fights and grappling. And I mean, it all gets hashed out in the long run. But for the most part, things like that, it can, especially in the Marine Corps, it's like we're good at three things and three things. That's drinking, fighting, and fucking, So if I'm not drinking and if I'm not fucking, we're fighting, That's how it goes. Um,
yeah.
So you've got yourself in this leadership position now. You're a team leader. You're able to effectively employ your Marines. What's your mindset now and the mission statement after you guys are coming back from that 11th MEU?
So that was a weird one because again, we knew that we were getting slated for a UDP, so we knew we were going to Japan on strictly a training deployment, and so trying to keep the guys super motivated and keep them in the fight for it. Of like, hey, yes, we understand we're going to Japan, and that there is, in order for us to get pulled off of the UDP to go anywhere in the world, like the entire Marine Corps has been activated. We're like recalling reserves, and it's really getting heavy. Was really the biggest leadership challenge for me at that point is because so many dudes were dropping packs. My peer group, a lot of my peer group was dropping packs of like, hey, we done this deployment. Now we're going on a UDP. There's no reason for us to stay competitive. There's no reason for us
Yeah,
to stay super combative. And it's like, man, at the same time, that's not the correct answer. And
I
so
agree.
I think the guys that were in my unit, our platoons, the dudes we got from security forces did a good job at still keeping that because after our UDP, then it was they went on a 31st, and then our dudes were some of the dudes involved in the
HKI.
HKI
Yeah.
evacuation,
So that's
and
a
keeping that morale up in the unit of like, hey, we understand that like First Marines has been pulled for quite some time, but it is still our job in the infantry, and so you still have to wear it with pride that you are an infantryman. You
yeah,
understand, like SEALs and everyone get all the cool high speed credit, and everyone thinks that that's where it's at. But it's like you're in the infantry. The infantry is what wins wars.
yeah,
Don't
baby.
drop your pack.
You're right. And that's a great point to like segue into that whole instance that happened in August of 2021. Um, you know, you can shape and mold these guys that they're going to be future leaders that come from the things that you implement onto them and you pass down to them, the knowledge and the training and the advice and all these things that's going to motivate them to want to be, am I going to stay in the Marine Corps? Am I going to get out of the Marine Corps? These guys that stay in, they go to, whatever they call, infantry squad leaders course, infantry unit, or like, what is it, IULC, infantry unit leaders course.
Mm-hmm.
They make transition into different MOSs. They go to an MRB. There's, something that changes the game in the sense of what they're willing to push themselves through to get to the next level. And if you've had guys in that position, does that feel like a reward to you when you know that the things that you had passed down like retained with somebody and they carry that to this like prestigious point in their career?
Absolutely. Knowing that, like, hey, when I left the unit, because I left the unit very soon after we returned from Japan. I think I had like a month left in the Marine Corps.
Okay. Oh,
By
so
the
you
time
you you did
we
go on
came
the
back from
UDP.
Japan,
Okay, okay, for sure.
yeah. Um, And so I was getting out of unit, and then it was up to, okay, did I do a good enough job of instilling the traditions of our unit coming from like Major Doug Zimbiak with the Lion of Fallujah down to our dudes and Raymond Doza of like, this is what our unit is built off of. This is the pride that you need to have in your unit and in each other, no matter what deployment schedule you guys have, no matter what you guys are slated for. This is who we are as a fundamental unit.
Yeah.
So,
And
and
now,
I think we did a decent job of that,
well, that then
of
that
passing it to those dudes, and then those dudes passing it to the next dudes.
okay, so that kind of answers the question that I want to ask you. I actually just started thinking about this, and you'll be the first person that I ask this to, but this is going to be specifically for Marines, um, and in every aspect, not just infantry Marines. Um, but you know, I'm thinking what preserves this mindset? What passes that down and what continues that? And it brought me to think of like how did the Marine Corps instill tradition and legacy like within you? Like what do you and we'll start with the first half. Like how did the Marine Corps instill tradition and legacy in you?
I've always been a big history guy. Like right now, I do a lot with like studying Mongol history, Mongol warfare, but history has always been a big thing for me. And again, I think that for me may come from that I am adopted, and so being able to track history is something that I find personally important in both sides of my lineage. And that's the same thing with the Marine Corps, right? Because all of our weird cultural norms that people have, traditions that people have, whether they know it or not, was passed down to them through someone else. I think that is one of the biggest things for just instilling that pride, because that's what the Marine Corps does, right? We're always shouting about Ophir Johnson, Dan Daly, all these old school dudes that we get a lot of our traditions from,
Yeah.
and just constantly repeating it, constantly trying to get guys to be proud, Matt, of like, this is where you come from. Take pride in it. These are the men whose shoes we're trying to fill.
Yes.
John Basilone, right? Machine gunners are great about it, right?
Yeah,
Machine
they
gunners and John Basilone,
that's because
you
they're
can't
just
separate
they're
those boys.
no, they're that's because they're a whole like if the Marine Corps dissolved at some point, and I hopefully it never happens, but there would still be a branch of machine gunners out there or something, just like there you can't get rid of us, you just can't get rid of us. Very, very, you know, they uphold the tradition of the Marine Corps and obviously the machine gun side of things with the gunfather, good old John Basilone. Um, so, obviously the Marine Corps instills like from what I'm taking from the way that you put it is obviously the Marine Corps implements these not characters, these people into your mindset of like how they paved the road in order for you to be able where you're at today. And to continue on with that, you need to be doing things that uphold those traditions and values so you can fill the shoes and make it like worthwhile that they lived this life and that they
Mhm.
sacrificed and did all these things. So by you saying that, like what is it that you do that you uphold and those traditions that were instilled in you?
So one of the things I did with those dudes, because again, once that generational time gap starts to get there, it lessens the pain of previous generations. I think is the best way to kind of phrase that. Excuse me. Where especially if you look at like just big conflicts over time, as we move farther away from when that conflict occurred, people just care about it less, right? Because it wasn't their immediate parents or their grandparents or anyone that fought it. And we even kind of see it now, which is super weird with how disconnected people are from the global war on terror if it didn't affect them directly.
Right.
And looking at global war on terror veterans differently than just like regular American citizens is like that is still during your time as a human being alive on this earth. And so trying not to lessen that. So like one of the ways it was done for me was we've got the crosses at Horno
Yep.
up there that were put up by Doug Zimbiak and Ray Mendoza and then put up again and just constantly running up there pre-deployment, post-deployment, um, constantly after field ops just to talk about it of like, hey, this is our legacy. It is up to us to uphold this legacy and not let the pride fall between what they established to now. So,
And do you think
and
that those implementations of like how you upheld it, right? Like how you passed that on to your guys, do you think that that's something that they continue to push on or press on with to this day, like they continue to do to their guys? Would you know for a fact that they're doing that?
I don't know for a fact.
Okay.
I know my junior peer group did, and I believe some of the other ones after did, but I don't know where it sits now. I don't think I know anyone that is still in 2-1 Echo anymore.
Excuse me. Hold on one second, Mark. Please, I need you
Yeah,
to go upstairs. Stop. Um, but I'll be right up there, okay? I'm sorry, brother.
no issue, man.
But yeah, that's I mean, and that's another thing too. I always think of like how I'm gonna edit it out to like cut it, but I mean, it's my life. It's what it is. That's what we're doing here, and it's like raw and real and in the moment. So it's like I'm like whatever. My kid can come down and bother me for a second. Hopefully nobody gets upset by that. Uh, so yeah, those. So you were saying that you don't know for a fact that they are, but go ahead and explain. I'll let you.
Yeah, I don't know for a fact anymore because I don't know anyone that's left in the unit anymore. Pretty much everyone has moved on to either doing their SDAs out at like Scout Sniper School or anything like that, recruiters.
Okay.
So
Well, that's you would think though that and I'm just trying to generalize it and no, like I don't know if generalize is the right word, but you the things that you did and the things that you instilled in these dudes, like there's more likely than not something that carried on from your junior Marines to their junior Marines that was like, involved in, some aspect of training or a period of instruction that they were given. So those tools that you used as a leader, like they're effective both on the Marine Corps side and the civilian side. And that's kind of, where I want to move into next. But did you make the decision to get out of the Marine Corps, I'm assuming, where you're at now?
I did. Again, I that was one of the other weird ones. Was I on our deployment to Japan? We had a very weak platoon sergeant, both physically and mentally. Um, there's a couple big moments for me that stood out for him of just not being there for us all the way, and then again not taking care of the guys and really protecting his rank. So this guy, like career fleet dodger, spent most of his time in SDAs, not as an 11, not doing his job, and then coming back and trying to tell us how to do it, but while looking like a sack of shit in his uniform,
Yeah,
um,
yeah,
and blasting us. And it's like, man, my boots may be dirty, but I'm not fat, so I got that going for me.
yeah.
Um,
That's an unfortunate thing to see, with leadership like that, so focused on some like, whether they are a drill instructor or some shit, those are usually some of the ones that are more of a pain in the ass when they come back to the fleet. And you're like, dude, this is not what it's about right now. Like obviously keeping your uniform cleaned and not having holes in your crotch and ripped camis and whatever. I get that, but to make an example out of people and really, really make it like a bullshit way of living over, small things like that. That's what I feel um, pushes guys to get out of the military, especially when there's nothing that's keeping them in, and then you got this shitty leadership, and it's like, what am I wasting my time with anymore? Is this kind of the things that are going through your head?
yeah, um, it was just, man, I couldn't get that dude to do his job. Like I remember trying to get him to submit my my packages to go to like AIC, and to do some follow on course, and he's like, "No, I want you to submit it." It's like, "You want me, a lance corporal, to submit my own package to the MEF commander?" Like
Yeah.
that's gonna go
Yeah,
well.
that great. Thank you. Thank you for the
uh,
help there. Yeah.
yeah, especially since I need you to sign a waiver because I'm a
Oh,
lance.
oh. You know what? Hey, Mark, I'm
So,
sorry to do this to you. Can we take a quick break and I'll be right back with you? Just hang out here. Give me
yeah,
5 minutes
sure,
and we'll come back to
absolutely,
it.
man.
Guys, we're taking a quick break with Mark Olson on the Pressing Forward podcast. I've got to go see my kids off, so we'll be right back with you. Okay, guys, so after a quick little break, we're back with the Mark Olson on the Pressing Forward podcast. I had to pull a little dad duty real quick, get the kids packed up for grandma and grandpa's. But before I had interrupted us there and taken off, we were talking about that like leadership capabilities, and like kind of being some of the reason that it's pushing you out. If you want to start off there, then let's do that.
Yeah, so I was starting to get out there. I started to lose a lot. I was trying to re-enlist uh, before I was getting out during my time in Japan because we were really pushing for packages. They had just stood up the squad leader development program, probably a year, 2 years before, I think, and so that was an option that I was considering. And then I was like, well, maybe I should just do an SDA, get my SDA out of the way, um, and then I wanted to go drill instructor, but I didn't have enough time in service as a corporal to get it waived to pick up sergeant in drill instructor school, as well as for whatever reason they disqualified me for one of my tattoos, even though it was in regulations. It looks out of regulations, but
Yeah,
it
tattoo
was
policy
it's
is
in
kind
at the
of
time.
bullshit. Yeah.
So um, that was happening, and I was like, okay, well maybe we'll do this. And then same thing. I that my same platoon sergeant was kind of handicapping me, was like, well, try stuff out in the Marine Corps, see what you want to do. And then their spot opened to go to Jungle Warfare Training Center and be one of the dudes over there, one of the cadre. And I was like, man, I loved Jungle Warfare Training Center when we were there. I want to do that. Um, and then it got denied as he said I didn't have enough time left on my contract to do it, even though one of the dudes I joined with, he got sent over there and was doing it. And so it was like, man, that I don't like that. Like you trying to get me to reenlist and then denying me options to see what I want to do.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back and really put kind of just a bad taste in my mouth for where I viewed the Marine Corps was headed. Because it's like, man, if this is the leadership that's here now, our senior leadership, I want to jump off this train before I have to deal with more of it. So
Do
ended
you
up
make,
getting out after that.
what year is this?
This would be 2018.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
early 2018.
so 2018, you make the decision to move on to something different. What kind of things are going through your head as you're on your way back home or whatever? You've got that DD-214 in hand. Is this something that you're excited about? Or are you like kind of on the fence about what your next step is? What's going on?
Yeah, I was super on the fence about it because career military is always what I had wanted to do as a child. And so leaving after 4 years after a single contract is like, man, now I've lost my sense of purpose, just like a lot of dudes do. Of I don't know what I want because this is what I wanted. And so now where do I go from here? So I started to look at other ways to still support and give back. So originally I had looked at becoming a gunsmith for the Asymmetrical Warfare Center, and go and work it over there, working on all the cool firearms that then get passed out to SOCOM so they can play with stuff. And that's really what started me down where I'm at now is looking at all of that for the TRS course, the transition course, and
Right.
figuring out what comes next.
So I mean, obviously you've had a passion for excuse me, for firearms, growing up shooting with your dad, going through the Marine Corps. So did you get that job that you wanted upon getting out? Like, did that put you on track to where you are now?
I didn't get the asymmetrical warfare job. I ended up not applying for it
Okay.
just because the you kind of already had to be a government contractor beforehand to get in to get selected. There was just so many certs that they required that you can't get without already being a government contractor. And so it was like,
Okay.
man, this is like a weird spot to try and apply with 90 certs. But still went down that route. Went to a gunsmithing school out here in Colorado to get a an associate's degree in gunsmithing. Well, excuse me, sorry, and get an associate's degree and start working on guns like that,
What's the
which
name of
which was
that
nice.
school? I forget because I lived in Colorado for like 4 years. I was in Thornton, so right down the street from you. I
Yeah,
was because I was gonna apply to that school and go to it. One of the kids I was working with, wasn't it like 2 hours south of Denver or something? It was like I
yeah,
forget.
it's right in Colfax, like right.
Okay.
Sorry, it's right in Lakewood, right off of Colfax.
Oh, okay. I'm thinking of a different one then. There's because that's like in the foothills, right? Like I know what you're talking about, like in Lakewood
Yeah,
down that way. Okay.
there's one in Trinidad too.
That's the one I'm thinking of, the one in Trinidad, because that's like a larger name school. I'm pretty sure there was a lot of guys going out there doing that. Um, so you get your degree, you got your associate's degree in gunsmithing. What kind of opportunities does that open you up to?
During that time, I was very fortunate that I started working at the range I still work at now as lead instructor. It's run by a couple ex Navy SEALs who are very open to bringing veterans on board. And so I applied there, started working as just a regular range guy. I was very fortunate that our GM at the time was a prior 0311. And then I think he went Green Beret, and I believe he went to seventh group. Um, but he was very opening, very talkative with me, helping getting me trained up, especially with like pistol, and get me to where we needed to be so that I could start getting into the training department more, and working with the current lead instructor at that time a little bit more to start teaching as well.
Nice. Was this like something that you're doing full time? Are you just part time at this point, or you've worked your way up to like you're part of the gun club now?
Yeah, so I started full time. I started full time there when I was going to school full time.
Okay.
So I did both of those, which was nice because GI Bill gave me a lot of extra finances to pay for my life, take care of anything that I needed there, and then have enough money to really invest into ammo and to be able to start investing into myself and my own
Yeah,
skill set.
the training aspect of it. Do you think that you had any hiccups in the road of when you were going to school, with the sense of just feeling like this isn't for me. I don't like being in the classroom. I'm sure there's like hands-on stuff with gunsmithing, but you obviously had to take other classes that you know, in order to obtain that degree. Am I correct?
So the nice thing with because it's an associate's degree in it, but it is a certified trade school, is that all of the classes still apply to the realm of gunsmithing. So even when we're doing like math courses, when we go to like machine shop, we still get math credits, we get English credits, and then we get like history credits and stuff for learning histories of firearms, how they work. So
Okay.
thankfully everything was still related. So
That's
it's
Fuck yeah,
easy to
that's
fit
awesome.
in.
Yeah, definitely. If I mean, I wish that there was more programs like even in other trades, you know, like trade aspects of just working with your hands, they were more readily available like all over the country if guys weren't able, like, you know, so the traveling aspect isn't that far. It seems like that's something that you enjoyed doing, so you didn't have any troubles with, you know, navigating through school then.
Yeah. Um, I had a little bit. I've never been good about going to school, I guess. It's one of the only ways I graduated high school is they called my recruiter and told him I stopped going to high school.
It's like, yeah, you better get your ass back in there and get a fucking high school diploma.
So um, it's difficult to do that, but at the same time, like in the beginning, it's kind of slow. But once we started working on guns, was where I really got engaged again. Of like, cool, this is what I want to do, and so we're doing what we want to do from there, which was nice.
Fuck yeah, and then you take it on to that next step. Was it a lot of time just like like being a gunsmith as a new guy? It's just like cleaning people's pistols and fucking, oh my rifle's not working. It's like, well, your bolt is not in your weapon, sir. You know, like
Yeah.
that kind of shit.
Yeah. I mean, that's 90% of gunsmithing, unfortunately, is just talking to customers and being like, well, what do you mean your gun jammed?
Yeah.
Like,
It's,
jammed how?
dude, I see some of the pictures that you post on Instagram with like, you know, like almost like an over the gun counter page kind of view. It's like, look at what this guy brought in today, or like, look at this bullshit. Like somebody's like loading their magazine backwards and shit. Like a round is like, I don't know. It's wild. This because I worked. That's like my first one of my first jobs I had was working at like the range, like 20 minutes from my house, and I thought it was going to be something different. I definitely thought that. Um, because I was a fucking Marine, you know, and I had this pretty eclectic resume, like where I've gathered all this knowledge from other schools and obviously having, you know, 2 combat deployments in there, you know, I'm thinking everybody's gonna want to fucking hire me and I'm gonna be like top tier guy. I go into the range and I get the job and it's a bunch of fucking FUDs and they're telling people to like look at these like Smith and Wesson air lights, you know, to like conceal carry and you could put it in your pocket type of talk. And and this was well before I got involved with like, you know, being um like more tactically proficient and like knowledge wise of knowing gear companies and shit like that and like how to set up gear. Obviously, I'd learned a lot of that in the Marine Corps, but taking it on more of as of a hobby. But just seeing the shit that comes across, like the questions people ask and how uneducated, you know, a lot of these people are, it makes you think of like, man, I should be doing something more to educate these people or provide periods of instruction to run them up to speed. And from what
Yeah.
I can see that you're doing now, it looks like you kind of took that path into like being able to be an instructor outside of just being at work and doing stuff for an alternate entity as well.
Yeah. I mean, that's the nice thing is you're absolutely right. Like, like that. Yeah. The Instagram page over the gun counter, it all seems like memes that wouldn't happen. Like, that's so ridiculous. It wouldn't happen
But it does.
until you're there and you're like, man, this is actually happening. Like, this is weird. Why would you say that? But yeah, that was one of the big things I got involved in. And thankfully, that's like the big thing. The reason that the owners own this range and bought this range and established it was for that reason. Of there's so many weird things going on. They weren't allowed to shoot at other ranges and draw and shoot at certain speeds that we just established that as a whole. And so our range has always been pretty good about trying to get like, hey, this comes from all of our dudes' experiences, whether it be the owners from the SEAL teams talking about this, whether it be John, our GM at the time, his time in the infantry in Fallujah versus when he went into seventh group, his time in Afghanistan and Colombia, versus now we've got SWAT dudes and other just Army infantry, Army Rangers. Like this is the shared experience across everything that all of these dudes have done and what has worked and what hasn't worked. Um, mashed together as
Yeah,
opposed to just like the set in the way each thing of like this is the only way to do it. This is how we did it in the teams, or this is how we did it in the First Marine Regiment, or this is how we did it in Second Squad, Third Platoon. Like, no, this is
right.
it's mashed.
And do
So
you think that like with a group of guys like that coming together, you're obviously able to, grab a larger, group of people, connect out to more people. And in that is the whole purpose, right? Like you're be able
yeah,
to assist in the training. And now that you know, like when you get somebody that comes into your class and let's say it's like a drawing from a holster type of thing, or in like a self-defense concealed carry period of instruction, and somebody's like a little unfamiliar, or they've got the basic building blocks, but you put them onto that next level where they feel comfortable and proficient with like the course of fire that they've ran and being able to drop a mag, insert, press out, and engage. Um, do you think that that is like a rewarding thing, and like knowing that your time invested in that, what like all that hard work and all that training that brought you to this point, does that pay off for you?
absolutely. There's nothing I love more than taking even just newer shooters and getting them the basic building blocks or getting them to finally push their limits with how comfortable they are with what they can truly get done with their gun. I don't think there's anything more gratifying out there than making Americans more prepared and better
Yeah,
shooters.
yeah. Like that mean prepared for anything from, self-defense, home invasion, like I don't want to, well, there's probably the UN like parking some fucking trucks and hopping out with tin blue helmets, like there's multiple things that you could be prepared for. And that goes into the sense of you found a way to give and it's like I don't want to make it seem like you're creating a fucking militia out there. That's not the type of, I obviously check out your Instagram and see what type of periods of instruction that you're putting on. It's not some 3%er type group stuff where you're just like mag dumping into a fucking TV that somebody brought that's broken. Like you guys are out there running legitimate courses of fire and giving people instruction on things that can, save their life. And then the competition side of things, I think that that's cool as fuck too. Like do you see a lot of veterans involved with the competition style shooting that you're out there doing?
I don't, unfortunately. That's one of the things that I like to try and branch out and do. There's a lot of guys in this industry right now that I think are doing a good job. Because there's always been kind of that weird disconnect before we start like a weird political argument in the shooting world right now with like tactical shooters versus competition shooters, and that no one can ever find the middle ground, or that so many of them refuse to find the middle ground between the two. So unfortunately, there's not a lot of those guys that just refuse to go out and shoot with guys that don't come from that background.
Yeah, that's a
Um,
that's one of those shitty things. It's like you can correlate that with like the disconnect between certain branches, certain MOSs, and like, job duties and capabilities and experience. So when you take away from that side of things, like being able to branch over and create a, bridging the gap between the understanding of the tactical proficiency applies to competition shooting, and things in competition shooting like speed and accuracy, like being able to speed up your, and still maintain a group on your target, and like transitioning to engage things at a, like all those things have a correlation that can build
mhm.
better fucking, a better skill set for shooters. And I personally have never participated in any competition events, and I think that, other I've done some like cowboy action shooting, but it was like a fun like event thing, like do fucking single action 45 long Colts, a couple lever guns, and like a 10 gauge shotgun, and you're running through a little course of fire. Obviously, I've been to some classes and courses and stuff, and more often than not, I see definitely on the tactical side of things where it's like I don't want to say run and gun type thing, but you see a lot of veterans that are out there wanting to get involved with it. And, maybe if you could find a way to bridge that gap between tactical and competition. And I don't know if there's any nonprofit organizations out there that do something like that. And, getting guys out there and running and gunning and giving them some training and get them involved with a group of people that is similar to what they used to be a part of. Do you think that working with the crew that you've got now, does that give you your own like tribe in a sense where you feel like you've gotten that camaraderie back?
Yeah. So I'm very thankful that one where I transitioned out to and where I started working has been very opening with or open with just having a very heavy veteran staff. So we already have a lot of common rapport between those guys, and then blending with, excuse me, citizens and private citizens that were never in the military, and then starting to build it, and then shooting competitively with those guys and bridging the gap. And then talking with other dudes, because there's a couple Recon Sniper Foundation dudes out here that are again trying to bridge that gap of getting veterans at least outdoors for
Yeah.
all of the things that they do. Whether you take up the shooting aspect side of that, or any of the martial arts side of Recon Sniper Foundation, or the physical aspect side. But yeah, getting guys out there and then starting to reestablish that tribe and reestablish that community is, in my opinion, one of the more important things, because no one cares at matches how you shoot. Everyone's there for the same reason, to have fun, to get better.
Yeah.
So
I mean, put yourself in that position where you've got a little bit of stress and pressure on you, and push yourself to the limits because obviously, it's that same saying of you're gonna revert back to your lowest level of training. So if your lowest level of
mm,
training is a higher standard, I mean, you're just being proficient, like being prepared, um, in any situation. Are you involved in any nonprofit organizations, or do you have any that you've worked with that you'd like to put out there?
yeah, so I've worked with Vet Expedition Therapy. They're a
Okay,
super new set up nonprofit out there. They just took a bunch of us out on a snowmobiling trip here recently. And that's what they're all about. They're all about getting veterans to reconnect to the outdoors as well as with each other, to stop
nice.
social isolation, and then getting dudes outside again, because sunlight's so important for us, reconnecting with nature, getting out of the cities and getting out of away from people, um, is super beneficial to the psyche.
Yeah, I agree. It's funny because you're like, you want to get this community, but you want to get out and get away from people. And, the way that you could, somebody that's listening that wouldn't understand, like, he's contradicting himself. Like, but you're getting within your community and people that recognize, like, where you're coming from and can relate to you. And you're getting away from the madness and the fucking bullshit that's going on inside the city. And you're able to get that quiet space to decompress and have that time to, you know, just engage
Yeah,
with each other and be a part of something.
yeah, it's just blocking out the noise. Like, even if we brought the people with us, some of the people in the city, but just not having the same background level noise of living in a city or being in a city versus being in nature with people that understand you and you can connect with on a different level, because there's so much shared common ground there, is different and hard for a lot of people to understand.
Yeah, it is, and that's kind of what we're trying to do, or well, what I'm trying to do, what my objective is. And I don't know if it's gonna get old if I like keep repeating it, every time I talk to somebody, but if we can work together and create the ability to either break down the barriers or bridging the gap or pressing in whatever your terminology you want to use to describe how we're going to do this. But where everybody's always talking about helping each other, helping, like veteran community standing up with each other, and no one. I shouldn't say no one. There's a lot of people out there that do the work and put in the work and participate and organize and they make it known that veterans can be a part of something. I think once you get rid of the what you used to do and then you focus on what you're doing now, it's an easier way to bridge that gap and participate together and enjoy shit like going out on those snowmobile trips. Like regardless of where you've come from and what you've done, the fact that you've signed your line on the dotted line and we've got that in common, training aspects and silly stories and shitty leadership, like all that stuff creates rapport. I've got something to
Mm-hmm.
engage with you on that we both understand. And that applies to the whole spectrum of things. So hopefully the next time you and I chat or when I come back out to Colorado and come run some guns with you, like we can have both found a way to have progressed forward with that a little bit. Or a lot of it. That'd be cool to see what the future holds after we have this conversation. But what if you want, let's hear. I want to hear your the current place you work at, so we can give any listeners if there ever are. I don't know if anybody gives a fuck about us talking, but maybe. Let's give it. I want to. Let's. If you're comfortable with putting it out there, that is, so no weird stalker is gonna come hunt you down or something. But where you're working, the company you're working with, and then the name of that organization that you've gone out and done some events with. So, and obviously, I'll tag them in the video.
Yeah, so I work full time over at Blue Core Shooting Center out here in Colorado. And then I also train a lot with Rogue Methods. We travel the nation, teaching firearms, teaching hand to hand stuff as well. And then Veteran Expedition Therapy. They're super small. They're really only doing stuff out here in Colorado right now, just because again they are such a new nonprofit. But they have a good mission set right now, and everyone that sits on their board is really solid dudes.
Yeah, that's good to hear because I know a lot of people have some skepticism when it comes to nonprofits and where they're going to put their time and resources into because they don't always have the best intentions. But I think coming from a guy like you, you've got some solid experience, you've got a good head on your shoulders, you're out there still kicking ass and getting after it. So, if I would hope that I can trust in taking your advice on, things to be a part of. And it's cool. Maybe bring some business into the range or some guy say, "Hey, I heard you on that asshole's podcast talking about this place." So I figured I'd come check it out. Is there anything that you can add? We didn't really get into many. It seems like you're a pretty solid dude. You've got your head on your shoulders. Are there things that you've struggled with, since getting out?
I struggled with a lot, especially during the HKI thing of did I set my dudes up for success when I left? And did my dudes set their dudes up for success when we left? And that was a rough time for me personally because my grandfather had died the week prior. And then a buddy of mine that we served with had died that same week. And then we got news from the dudes over there that originally we got news that Echo had been hit. And so it was like, okay, shit. So now we know we've gotten hit, who's hit, and then where do we go from here? And trying to rationalize that. Like, did I set my guys up for failure in this aspect, or did I train them correctly? And that this situation was just out of their hands was a difficult time for me. Thankfully, a lot of the guys were out at the same time, um, and we were all talking together of like, hey, this is how we train the guys. This is what we did. The dudes knew what they were doing. You were there. You talked with them before they left. They were solid dudes. You've talked with them since previously. Well, one of the times I went back there, and then again, just talking with dudes about my own thing, them giving me a little bit of space as well. While I dealt with personal family issues, and then them giving my peer group a little bit of space while we dealt with one of our other buddies who had been killed during that same time. We tried to figure out what was going on.
So would you say that like, through these times that you're experiencing these like tribulations and you've got a little bit of like man, it's tough to take loss, in any aspect, whether it's somebody that you knew, a family member, you were there when they died. Um, do you think that maintaining that line of communication with the guys and being able to chat with each other is, did that show some resilience in you guys, like just being able to boost each other up? And I mean, this is pretty obvious to you and I, but I just want these things to be stated so that if somebody's listening, that they know that like they can rely on the boys.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a completely different game when you think you're alone and there's people out there that do care about you. No matter how many you think it is, I guarantee if you just call people, someone is going to answer the phone. Or even if you just text people, someone will answer the phone at any time of the night, at any time of the day. Someone is awake doing something, or someone may be awake having their own issue, but being able to connect and be able to talk it through and have just a rational conversation between two people with similar experience, I think is unparalleled out there.
Yeah,
Um,
I agree. I think the Marine Corps itself, I mean, and obviously I'm not a subject matter expert on Army and Navy and Air Force stuff, but I know for a fact with my experience through the Marine Corps is, guys are pretty fucking good about maintaining open lines of communication and always being there. Like I've seen some really outgoing things done for guys that are in shitty situations, and to know that throughout all these people that I've met, I've been a part of all these other families and shit, and I could pretty much go to any 50 of the United States and have a place to lay my head. That's a pretty large fucking thing to be a part of. And for anybody that thinks that they're alone out there or struggling, what would you say to somebody out there that, maybe let's listen to this, and if they're in a fucking rut right now, they're in a dark spot, and what words of advice do you have for them to help with that situation?
And just go out, call someone, and then think about just what you can do to change your life a little bit into positives, little things like not drinking, which is the one everyone automatically goes to, but even just getting sunlight, just going out, standing in the sun, disconnecting from the bullshit that is our everyday life with technology and all of that, and just enjoying your day and looking at what the beauty of life is instead of what's all the negative. And that can be difficult because negative is the most powerful emotion, so we latch onto it very well. But for me, the sunlight one is the big one. Just disconnect,
Yeah,
take a little bit of time and focus on yourself, breathe.
I agree. That's I think that's one that's forgotten about a lot, is just to go outside, move your fucking legs, do some exercise. Um, that's probably a good place to start. So, I know that, and this is you didn't you joined during the global war on terror. You participated in events and exercises, and you put yourself in a position where, if needed, you'd be out there and fighting the good fight. But through witnessing it, growing up, seeing the global war on terror take place, being involved in the military, and in the capacity that you were during that, and being ready to be involved, do you are you able to sum up the GWAT in one word? If you could think of one word that describes it, what would you say?
Man, I think it's the same way that you and Mason described it, is just an absolute betrayal, especially right now with how we look at what they want to do with disability based on how much money guys make. Because I know guys that make money, enough money over that threshold limit, but are permanently injured from their time in service. And so it's like, well, how can you say that now that they're successful on the outside, that what happened to them during their time in is does not count still?
Right.
And that's one of the weird ones for me, of just the amount of people that are willing to turn their back on guys who know nothing of war, nothing but war. Um, right, pretty much both me and your entire generation has been in war, whether it
Yeah.
be the end of the Gulf Wars into the whole GWAT,
Yeah.
and then be able to just that so many people can turn their backs on those guys and then put their eyes outwards again to like Ukraine or other political situations.
Yeah, and
Um,
then being so willing to stand up and like support that after you've just complained for the last 20 years about the war that we've been involved with, and somehow this is more justified, where you want to send American money over there, and hopefully it doesn't get to the point where sending American troops over there. Um,
yeah,
I would
that's the weirdest one, of people being like, well, why don't you go fight for Ukraine? It's like, well, why don't you go fight for Ukraine?
yeah,
Like, I've already signed my name for the United States. I don't want to do it for another country. I
yeah.
like Americans, and if it's not Americans' interest, I want nothing to do with it.
Well, hey, I think a lot of us can agree to that. Not saying that we would back down from a fight, but why get into a fight when it's not any of your business? And again, I am not a political science major, and knowing all these things on what's going on over there, the ins and the outs, but I do know that if we're gonna be supporting and standing behind something, that we should be able to see some fucking progress, especially the amount of money that we've been funneling into that. But we don't need to go down that road. We've
Yeah,
talked about some good stuff, man. I really appreciate your time coming on here. You've divulged some personal information. We talked about growing up, the journey that you've had through the Marine Corps, and where you're at now. And I love talking to you because you've got a very straightforward, driven mindset, where you know what you want to accomplish. Yes, you've had some bumps in the road, may or may not have gotten to do the things that you've wanted to do, but you're out here still fucking getting after it. You went through school, you endured through that. You got yourself in a position where now you're working in a profession that you love with something that you're passionate about. And I like to show those stories of success and being able to come from, uncertainty with what you're going to do and where your life's going to bring you. And here you are now fucking killing it, dude. So I'm looking forward to seeing what you're going to put out there, where the road takes Mark Olson. And, hopefully I'll see like maybe you're going to start that nonprofit that's going to get veterans out there, get them back running some guns and getting some fucking training and getting them back involved into a tribe of guys. Um, so thank you for your time. Thank you for your service. And thanks for hanging out with me today and bullshitting and telling your story, brother.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, anytime. So, we'll be in touch and take care. And that was Mark Olson on the Press It Forward podcast, and we'll catch you guys later.